This video is an excerpt from our new book, Explaining Brexit: The Ultimate Guide. You can pre-order it now at a discounted price, link in the description. As you surely know, the day of Brexit is getting ever closer. On the 29th of March 2019, the UK will leave the European Union, and UK citizens could lose their right to free movement within the EU. Currently, if a UK citizen wants to live, work, or travel to any other EU nation, they don't need to go through the visa process. However, post-Brexit, this could all change. Depending on the deal the UK comes to with the EU, UK citizens may lose these privileges. If the UK reaches a deep, comprehensive deal with the EU, the UK government could secure the same rights for freedoms that currently exist. A deal like this would continue to allow UK citizens to travel freely through the EU as normal, and not really affect UK citizens. However, with time running out, it looks possible that the UK may not secure any deal. And if there's no deal in place, a lot is set to change for Britons, and they could find their holidays being severely affected. Of the top 10 holiday destinations with Brits, 9 are in the EU, with Brits making around 31 million trips to just these 9 EU nations every year. So how would these holidays be affected by Brexit? In 2020, the EU is introducing a new travel authorization system, which requires tourists to register online before visiting an EU nation, as well as paying a nominal fee. If the UK doesn't have a specific deal with the EU and isn't part of the Union, then British citizens will need to register and pay before travelling to EU destinations. Once you've paid the fee, UK citizens will be able to use their passports as normal to visit EU nations. There's been a lot of talk about UK passports changing colour after Brexit, but your passport will only be replaced once your current one expires. However, on arriving in an EU nation, UK passports would hold a different value. Remember those EU citizen lanes at border security? If the UK leaves without a special agreement, UK citizens would no longer be able to use these lanes, instead having to queue in the all passports lane. Norwegian and Swiss citizens are able to use the EU lanes despite not being EU nations. This is due to special arrangements made between these nations and the EU. As part of those arrangements, both Switzerland and Norway have agreed to accept some EU laws and regulations, and if the UK opts for a hard Brexit, it's unlikely they'll be willing to make the same deal. However, it's not in the EU's interest to make life difficult for British travellers. The ABTA estimates that Brits spend around £20 billion on holidays in EU countries each year, meaning the EU has a lot to lose if British tourists decide to holiday elsewhere. Currently, EU law means that there's no roaming charges for data usage throughout the EU. When the UK leaves the EU, it will no longer be affected by these laws, and without new laws or agreements, UK phone networks will be able to start charging for data use in the EU again. However, due to the popularity of free data abroad, it doesn't seem like rolling back free usage would be a good move for the phone networks. More serious than your phone usage, the European Health Insurance Cards, or EHIC, gives UK citizens the right to receive medical treatment in any other EU nation, free or at a reduced cost. If the UK chooses to leave the EU but remain in the European Economic Area, UK citizens would likely be able to keep the benefits of EHIC. However, in the case of a hard Brexit, UK citizens may start having to pay full price for healthcare in the EU again. Longer term, the UK may be able to negotiate reciprocal healthcare agreements with individual nations. The UK already has deals with Australia, New Zealand and Russia, but getting deals like this set up to allow free or discounted healthcare to Brits in the EU would take time. The other impact of losing EHIC cards would be that travel insurance costs could rise. The ABTA published a report saying that if UK citizens lost their free or discounted healthcare in the EU, the cost of travel insurance would likely rise. EU law regulates plane travel, from the routes planes can fly to the safety regulations they must uphold. As such, the UK would need to negotiate new airline treaties with the EU to allow UK airlines to continue landing in EU countries. If it got to the 29th of March without a deal, the UK would need to seek emergency agreements with the EU to allow UK flights to continue flying to the EU. The EU-US Open Skies Agreement allows EU and US airlines to fly freely between any point in the EU and any point in the US. This agreement has allowed airlines to put on more flights and is said to be one of the major reasons behind the falling cost of airfare in recent years. If the UK leaves the EU and therefore also leaves the Open Skies Agreement, Brits may find less flights being available to them, and those which are still available could end up costing more. It's for this reason that many major airlines, including EasyJet, Ryanair and Virgin Atlantic, publicly expressed their opposition to Brexit back in 2016. The decreasing value of the pound also affects British tourists regardless of where they're travelling. During the Brexit process so far, the value of the pound has dropped when compared to a number of other currencies, including the US dollar and the euro. The day before the referendum, £1 would have got you €1.30, and on the day of recording, a pound will only get you €1.12, a drop of nearly 14%. This is predicted to continue at least until a final deal or lack of deal is reached. The falling value of the pound makes everything in Europe more expensive, and will make holidaying within the EU more costly for Brits. The advice is that if you're going to book a holiday in the EU after the 29th of March, double check the terms of sale. This is especially true if you're buying travel insurance to cover delays and cancellations. Often, travel insurance covers cancellations as a result of bad weather or strikes. However, the large-scale disruption which could result from Brexit may not be covered, so make sure to check the clauses of your insurance policy before leaving. Explaining Brexit, the Ultimate Guide is our new book which aims to explain every aspect of Brexit. We want to cover everything you could possibly want to know, so we're looking for your questions to answer. Comment below any questions you have and we may be able to answer them in the book or an upcoming video. The book is released on paperback and Kindle on September 21st. You can pre-order the Kindle version now at a discounted price. The link's in the description.